The ninth plenary meeting of the General Assembly is called to order. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Huril Suk Ukna, President of Mongolia. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I wish to extend my heartfelt congratulations to Your Excellency, Mr. Philemon Young, President of the 79th session of the UNGA. I wish you every success in your important work during this session. Every time when I participate in the General Assembly, I find great pleasure observing this sculpture entitled Consciousness, created by a renowned Mongolian artist and located in the garden of the UN headquarters. This sculpture inspires deep contemplation, reminding us of our responsibilities, awareness, and dignity in the context of humanity's history and our obligations to future generations. This profoundly meaningful work symbolizes the historic moment when countries around the world embraced the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. During my visit this year, the monument stood solemnly, as if urging us to reflect on the goals and commitments we have made for the future generations. Unfortunately, as we approach the time to assess the implementation of these documents, we recognize that our efforts and the progress we have achieved are insufficient. For instance, although we are halfway through the timeline for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, progress on nearly half of the SDG targets remain inadequate, with 35% showing stagnation. In response, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has initiated the Summit for the Future to reassess our realities, revitalize our commitments, and amplify our collective efforts. At the summit held just 2 days ago, we engaged in discussions on policies, objectives, and avenues for cooperation concerning sustainable development, science, technology, innovation, youth, and governance transformation. I'm pleased to note that Mongolia actively participated in the negotiation process for the Pact for the Future, Declaration on Future Generations, and the Global Digital Compact, all of which were discussed and adopted at the summit. The countries of the world, including our own, must work diligently and cooperate to implement these proposed actions. I'm pleased to see that heads of state, government, and their representatives have wholeheartedly supported these commitments and actions, voicing their positions from this esteemed podium. Distinguished delegates, our lives are rapidly evolving and integrated in this age of technological progress and digital advancement. However, tensions, armed conflicts, and wars continue to escalate in many parts of the world, fueled by geopolitical tensions stemming from prejudice, extreme ideologies, mistrust, misunderstanding, and disrespect. Mongolia believes that strengthening multilateral cooperation based on international law and the UN Charter is essential for ensuring international peace and security. Dialogue, mutual understanding, and trust are the foundations for sustainable and peaceful coexistence. To sustain peace, combat climate change, protect public health, reduce economic inequality, and establish justice, the international community must seek optimal solutions and foster innovative cooperation that address the evolving dynamics of our era. This year, presidential and parliamentary elections took place in over 60 countries, with nearly half of the world population exercising their right to vote, making a year of significant choices. In Mongolia, parliamentary elections were also held, and I would like to highlight that both domestic and foreign observers, as well as international organizations, have commended the elections for being successfully conducted within the legal framework. Mongolia has always consistently sought to contribute to the international community's efforts for peace, security, and sustainable development. In this regard, Mongolia has established diplomatic relations with all member states of the United Nations and is dedicated to strengthening and developing friendly relations and cooperation with all countries around the globe. As a nation that consistently pursues to a peaceful, open, independent, and multipolar foreign policy, Mongolia respects the pluralism inherent in the diverse histories, cultures, civilizations, religions, national interests, and development paths of countries around the world. We strive to develop international relations based on multipolar principles. Therefore, my country upholds the principles of the UN Charter, particularly the commitment to refrain from using force against the territorial integrity and political independence of any state. In addressing this agreement and conflicts, we call upon countries and nations around the world to prioritize diplomatic dialogue over confrontation, promote unity over hostility, and pursue collective goals rather than divisiveness in order to consistently cooperate in strengthening international peace and security. As Mongols, we have a rich history of valuing and seeking amicable solutions through dialogue. For centuries, Great Mongol Empire engaged through political and diplomatic means in its relations with neighboring, distant, allied, and adversarial nations. This included sending and receiving envoys and ambassadors, concluding agreements, fostering friendship, and negotiating, which are the practices that remain as the cornerstone of Mongolia's current foreign policy. The Gerege serves as a historical evidence of this legacy. It represents the origins of credentials handed to envoys or modern diplomatic passports, having been used by Mongols since the 13th century in their relationship with other nations. The Gerege is displayed as a historic artifact at the United Nations headquarters. In 2000, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan remarked that Gürge is an invaluable heritage gifted by Mongols to the international community, emphasizing that we have a lot to learn from the wisdom of Mongolian ancestors. The principles of maintaining peace and harmonious coexistence championed by our ancestors reflects the progressive ideals that underpin our current collective effort to sustain peace and stability. At present, humanity is alarmed by the deepening global geopolitical tensions, which ignite the fires of war and heighten the nuclear threat. The collective efforts of countries around the world towards non-proliferation, disarmament, and the total elimination of nuclear weapons, as well as the expansion of nuclear weapon-free zones, must not be overlooked. Mongolia has made significant contributions to the elimination of nuclear threats by having its nuclear weapon-free status recognized at the international level. We reaffirm our commitment to continue pursuing and supporting nuclear weapon-free policies and initiatives. Mongolia calls upon all countries to collaborate in ensuring peace and stability, particularly in creating a world free from nuclear threats. We propose the convening of a special gathering on this issue within the framework of the United Nations. Mr. President, Mongolia deeply appreciates the role of UN peacekeepers, the Blue Helmets, who serve tirelessly and make significant contributions to international peace and security. Due to various factors such as international terrorism, brutal acts of extremism, and the growing number of refugees, Blue Helmets are confronted with increasingly complex tasks under more challenging conditions. We must not forget that over 4,370 UN peacekeepers, including military, police, and civilian personnel, have lost their lives in the line of duty. Although Mongolia has a relatively small population, Over the past 20 years, more than 20,000 peacekeepers have been deployed to hotspots around the world to contribute to peace and security of humanity. In particular, in alignment with the Women, Peace, and Security agenda of the UN Security Council, we aim to increase women participation in UN peacekeeping operations. Currently, Mongolian female officers made up to 11% of our peacekeepers. To ensure the competence of our peacekeepers, it is crucial to improve their psychological well-being. Therefore, Mongolia initiated and developed a pilot project for supporting peacekeepers and their families, which was submitted to the UNDPKO. Mr. President and distinguished delegates, in recent years, the rapid development of information and communication technologies has significantly impacted the daily life of our people and is seen as a factor that may fundamentally reshape the development of civilization in the future. In line with these intensive discussions on information and communication technologies and artificial intelligence have arisen in the international fora and the recently adopted global digital compact is a timely and essential step. Our country aims to keep pace with the development of information technology, placing great importance on UN resolutions, documents, and other international legal frameworks related to this issue, and keenly participating in their discussions. In March of this year, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution calling on member states to ensure the reliability and security of artificial intelligence for the first time, which is a significant step forward. To accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, countries around the world are focusing on policies that promote economic diversification, energy and digital transitions, reduce the negative impacts of climate change, enhance adaptive capacity, and increase access to essential social services, particularly in education and health, while also prioritizing employment and food security. On the other hand, global debt accumulation has reached unprecedented levels, which, with debt service payments in developing countries exceeding the amounts borrowed, further constraining the budgetary space needed to implement sustainable development goals. Mongolia fully supports the international community's efforts to not only ensure debt sustainability, but also fundamentally reform the international financial architecture under the initiative outlined in the UNSG's report, Our Common Agenda. Distinguished delegates, in the early years of the 21st century, ideological conflicts that divide the world became history, while traditional military threats receded and not traditional threats such as climate change, pandemics, terrorism, cybercrime, and refugees gained increasing attention. However, this situation has changed drastically in the recent years, with traditional threats resurfacing and negatively impacting international security and sustainable development. In other words, the overlap and expanding scope of traditional and non-traditional threats requires countries around the world to pay special attention and strengthen their collaborative efforts. In particular, global warming and climate change have transcended natural and economic boundaries, exacerbating sensitive social issues and disputes over resources and triggering migration that bring numerous direct and indirect dangers and risks. If this situation continues, humanity will face not just a choice between development or stagnation, but rather a choice between existence and non existence. Therefore, we must carefully assess the situation and recognize the need for smart solutions based on the advancement of our era, as well as implementation of new technologies, and share good practices while collaborating to overcome challenges posed by climate change. As descendants of nomads, we Mongols have preserved and honored our unique cultural heritage and traditions to this day. The origin of our nomadic civilization is, in fact, the philosophy of green development, which emphasizes caring for and protecting nature while responsibly utilizing its benefits. This indicates that we have substantial traditional wisdom and initiatives regarding the future of green development. thus in line with the goals of the Sustainable Development as well as Vision 2050 long-term development policy of Mongolia has successfully been implementing national movements and programs such as Billion Trees, Food Security and Safety, Healthy Mongolia, and Digital Mongolia. These initiatives represent our contributions at both international and regional levels in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm also pleased to announce that Mongolia is actively working to implement the resolution adopted by the UNGA, declaring the 2026 as the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists. Furthermore, we're also preparing to host the 17th conference of the parties to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification in Ulaanbaatar in 2026. I'm confident that the international community and member states will support and collaborate with us in these efforts. Mr. President, Mongolia, as a landlocked country with its unique location on the Central Asian plateau, and extreme weather conditions, has consistently paid particular attention to the issues of countries in similar special situations. We have already collaborated with them to safeguard our interests and make tangible contributions to amplify our voices on the global stage. Mongolia and Austria co chaired the preparatory committee for the third United Nations Conference on LLDCs for 2023 2024 and successfully facilitated discussions on the draft outcome document among member states. We're pleased that the draft of the action program to be adopted at the upcoming conference in Botswana next December includes innovative content outlining specific goals and measures to guide the development of LLDCs over the next decade. Therefore, we urge all LLDCs, transit countries, and all UN member states and development partners to engage at the highest level in the third conference on LLDCs and to contribute creatively to discussions for the successful implementation of the program of action. Mr. President, at the Fourth World Conference on Women held in Beijing in 1995, it was proclaimed that women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights, setting forth the significant goals of eliminating barriers to gender equality on the global stage. We Mongols have a long lasting culture and tradition of honoring and respecting women with a history of Mongol queens and women who played crucial roles in governance and social affairs throughout our nation's history. This rich traditional and cultural heritage have continued to evolve, positioning Mongolia as one of the leaders in promoting gender equality in Asia. In its first constitution, Mongolia became the first country in Asia to safeguard guarantee equal rights for women, including the rights to vote and to be elected. This year, we celebrate the centennial anniversary of the establishment of the National Organization for Women, the Mongolian Women's Federation. As we approach this historic anniversary in 2023, we have implemented legal policy reform designed to enhance women participation in both social and political decision-making level. As a result, in the recent parliamentary election, 25.4% of elected members were women, exceeding the average rate of 21.2% in Asia. Moreover, in August this year, our country successfully hosted the World Women's Forum under the theme Towards a Green Future in Ulaanbaatar in collaboration with the United Nations. This forum brought together women leaders and from governments, international organizations, and influential representatives from diverse sectors, social, economic, and cultural, across 5 continents. They proposed numerous creative initiatives to enhance women's role and contributions toward achieving sustainable development goals, including economics, environment, climate change, food security, education, sports, culture, and the arts. I'm pleased to highlight that the Ulaanbaatar Declaration towards a Sustainable Future was adopted as the forum's outcome document. Building on the momentum of the World Women's Forum, Mongolia will continue to actively promote gender equality and the empowerment of women. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, the General Assembly of the United Nations is the most important and honorable podium for amplifying the voice of ideas and aspirations for international peace and security, well-being, and development of humanity. Mongolia has consistently supported the efforts of member states to reform the UN Security Council into a more equitable, accessible, transparent, effective, democratic, and responsible system. We also strongly advocate for further strengthening the United Nations' central role and coordination in global affairs. Our country believes that any international challenges and misunderstandings should be addressed through mutual understanding, trust, respect, and dialogue, and resolved within the framework of international legal norms. Therefore, I call on you, heads of states, governments, and distinguished delegates, to demonstrate exceptional leadership and make meaningful contributions to strengthen trust, mutual respect, and cooperation among the nations of the world in the crucial pursuit of global peace, security, sustainable development, and the well-being of humanity. May the eternal blue sky bless us with peace throughout the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of Mongolia. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Wavel Ramkalawan, President of the Republic of Seychelles. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I would like first of all to extend my words of congratulations to Ambassador Yang on your election as President of the General Assembly for this 69th session. I wish also to thank Ambassador Francis for his diligent leadership during the 78th session. Mr. President, as the highest representatives of the peoples of the world, we meet every year in this institution, which promises to deliver peace, progress, and prosperity for all. We must be frank in our assessment of what we are doing for the people that we represent and their interests that we serve. For my people of the Seychelles, we must be critical of our approach to the challenges of today and plan for the challenges of tomorrow. The world is less secure than even just 1 year ago. Where we hoped that existing conflicts could be resolved, we find ourselves in a situation more tense and precarious. Flames stoked by competition and distrust threaten to engulf those who have no part in these conflicts, leaving us gripped by a fearful atmosphere of instability exacerbated by the worry of expanded warfare. We are in danger of losing sight of the values that bring us together, that transcend borders and cultures, that are understood in all languages and present in all ideologies. We must revert to our foundational principles of dialogue and cooperation. Without a stable foundation, we cannot build our vision of a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. Our focus is